Fundamentally, people try and change the incessant thoughts and emotional reactions a lot, but they try to do it at things that are a surface level. Even something like meditation, you're just going to focus on your breath. When you stop that, the thoughts, the fears, the emotions, they come back. And they come back because the underlying structure of the unconscious mind is still there going, we're still here, we still have these stories to generate, and so they're back at it. Now, that's not to say that meditation is useless. You want to build a part of your brain that's thinking, dreaming, feeling different. But my experience is the stories go away when you deal with them at a belief system, an energy level, the nervous system, often in that structure. That means not just the thoughts or the emotion, but what is the underlying structure underneath that? And that structure I call belief. And you have to put attention on that belief. Okay? And that belief is often created in we'll call it a core memory and experience. Okay. Say we were, classic one I can think of is a gentleman, he's in his 50s and he's working out kind of this freeze panic he has at work when things aren't going right, and he's trying to solve this complex thing and he's pressed for time, and the computer system's down. And he would find this panicky freeze. And when he traced it back to a core memory, he is in second grade, he's at the chalkboard trying to do his times tables, and he forgets what his times tables are, and the teacher kind of shames him. And so in that shame and embarrassment, what everybody thinks of him, and feeling terrible, his nervous system and his brain shuts down, kind of a freeze state. And 40 years later, when he's at work and he feels a pressure to have the right answer, he doesn't know the right answer right away. His mind does this association. It goes back to doing the same kind of Pavlov's dog response that it did when he was in second grade at the chalkboard. He's like, oh, everybody's looking at me. I'm supposed to have the answer, but I don't have the answer. This situation that's happening now with the computer system down is like the one I had at second grade at the chalkboard. That association makes the brain fire and the neural pathways fire in a manner the brain is going, oh, this situation is like that one, and reminds him of all and activates that memory with the same emotions and then the same flooding out of in his chemicals in his system, cortisol and adrenaline. It also down into fires the circuits in his brain, and now his nervous system is responding the same way as heart rate and breathing, and puts his brain in a kind of fight or flight freeze state and takes it out of the executive function where he could actually solve the computer problem. This is the unconscious memory. And in that unconscious memory formed earlier in life, there's all sorts of beliefs that get attached to it. I don't know what I'm doing. This is embarrassing. I'm stupid. They're all laughing at me. I'm afraid. This isn't, this teacher, this authority figure is shaming me. I'm worthless. So all of those thoughts are infused with the emotion and certainty of time. This is who I am, and my worth and my incapability to solve this. So from that experience, this is my worth. This is my lack of capability. This is my lack of ability to solve this. All of those ideas are infused with emotion and an energy of certainty, what I call faith, like absolutely this is who I am and what I'm not capable of doing. Excuse me. And one of the key elements in there is an identity. This is who I am. This is my worth. Okay? And so one of the key elements of the story of the belief is identity. And this is the most crucial element that when you change belief systems, you have to change. Because when he's 50 years old working a large computer problem, high level, and this kind of nervousness happens, God, I don't know the answer. I don't know how to figure this out right now. People are looking at me, they're depending on me to fix this. I reverts into his 7, 8-year-old self, his identity. This is who I am. And that sense of identity in the memory is what he feels. It's where his brain is operating from. It's what his emotions are dictating. It's his perception of himself and what his capability is. And then he kind of looks out the world through that lens of a 7, 8-year-old, feeling overwhelmed. Okay, and that's the reaction that's happening emotionally, physically, in the body, nervous system, but also in the perception, sense of self. That's one of the critical elements of a belief. When a belief becomes activated by association to something we experienced in the past, is a shift in our sense of identity. It's the most critical element in changing belief, to change what it is happening at a brain level, neural pathways firing, and yet our sense of self. Okay. Now we can have a lot of beliefs that are dormant. He goes about his day, he goes about his work, operating in his adult, mature, capable self. And then this extra level of stress happens. And now it's like the brain goes, well, this is like that. And like a Pavlov's dog response, he's salivating. Okay, or his heart rate's going. His body's changing shape. It's getting hunched down. Everything's tightening up. Prefrontal cortex for executive decision-making shuts down. Amygdala, fight or flight, gets activated, cortisol, adrenaline, all the chemicals going through his body. This is what happens. Gosh, when we want to ask somebody out, when we're walking down the street, somebody's behind us, we're afraid, got to go to our car in a parking lot, whatever a fear scenario is. When you leave your house and you're like, anything you have anxiety about, it's often some history, memory in the past, a belief added to that experience carries it forward. Okay. So in hunting these beliefs, often back to the core memory and energy, we want the beliefs that are stacked on top of it. This is who I am. This is what I'm capable or not capable of. This is what will happen because something like that happened in the past. Our mind is building this whole structure of story. Oh, I'm afraid this will happen. And it grips it as if it's real with certainty. That's what I call faith. We are very likely not to see these things when we look for beliefs. He didn't see this for quite a while doing work. Okay. So one day he was doing a process and it was like, when did I feel this for the first time? Oh, click. And he tracked the associated emotion, like that was the first time. And a lot of times, experiences like that, our brain says, well, these are painful things to remember. We don't want to remember it. Let's not think about it. Let's bury that in the unconscious. Let's think about other stuff. Or let's numb ourselves with, scrolling something on the internet, right? And we see a lot of people, it's the new AI of the Matrix where we get lost in the scrolling on the internet. And I know it's difficult for myself too. I'm like, wow, it's all sorts of entertainment and funny stuff and educational stuff, but we stop feeling. So it's a remedy to uncomfortable emotions, but we end up in a numbness instead of really feeling and really living. Okay. So thank God we have this protective denial system of painful past memories. So we aren't feeling those emotions all the time. And if we want to clean up kind of the subconscious energies that come out and associations, we have to move through that denial system. And so it's just a very helpful protective barrier that we then have to remove. Like, well, why can't I get to this emotion? Why can't I remember what happened? You're like, well, because you have a very good protective denial system. Okay. And that's part of the work, the obstacle of seeing these things. Literally, I can be teaching at times. I remember doing workshops. Sometimes people will just like go to sleep. Sometimes the attention will wander off to something else. And I know from my experience, my attention will wander at critical moments. In my studies, and it'd be like, Miguel would ask me, one time he asked me, did you see that? And I'm like, no. He's like, rolls his eyes, because he knew my attention had wandered or something. Or he did after I told him. But yeah, my attention would wander in critical moments of like, no, I don't want to see that. So very beautiful protective denial system from a lot of emotional memories. And if you want to clean up those reactions, the work is to resolve that. So when we do go looking for what are these beliefs that are activating emotions and behaviors and incessant thoughts, what we see usually is at a surface level is the thought. What's my mind thinking about this emotion? Who's it blaming? Right? And then underneath the thought will be emotion. Now we're getting closer to like, where's the energy of this real issue? And then the more subtle thing to see is, what's the identity? Who do I feel I am in that moment? What associated memory is activating that I'm angry? Or in this gentleman's case, the way he's kind of feels that shame and freeze response. Like, who am I in that moment that is? And when did I feel that in the past? Identity that's coming forward, that's being activated. Okay. For a long time, I had an identity that I would activate when I was serious about getting stuff done, and it was Drill Sergeant Lieutenant Van Warmerdam from my time in the Navy, and I was telling people what to do, and I was like not making friends. And little did I know, I was in a mode of like I really focused, but alienating the people around me. Okay, and I still have a gear that neural pathway is very strong. That it was like, oh yeah, I can become very short and snappy when I get focused like that. I'm like, all right, so I got to pull my brain out of Sergeant Van Woman and relax. I'm working with other people and how I ask them, my tone of voice I use. Okay. So what's the thoughts and stories? What's the emotion behind it? What's the identity in it? And then underneath that, there's the belief system. What are the agreements we made at this time earlier in the life, say where core memory was happened?